Swarupam. When I was listening to this chant just now, it occurred to me that whatever is easily available to us, we're not able to see divinity in that. So Annam Parabrahmam Swarupam. Anna, which is food, is the reflection of the divine, ultimate divine. And one of the easiest way to experience that is don't eat for 3 days and you will realize that food is really God because it's available easily to all of us in abundance. We tend to take things for granted. Also, what a beautiful day to share this second part with all of us. It's a day of Ekadashi, 11th day of the lunar cycle, and a very auspicious day to fast. So many of us on this satsang today are on fast. So what a beautiful day to talk about dimensions of food on a day when we're all fasting. Because when you fast, I have observed that you tend to receive better. Your chetana, your consciousness is much more wide, much more awake. You're much more receptive. Because the content of food is not weighing down your system. So there's a lot of open space in the system. So an auspicious day to talk about dimensions of food. After the last satsang, there were many questions by friends, some emails by friends. So I thought let's first talk about those questions which we couldn't take up last time, and then we'll move forward. So friends, we'll follow the same format. If there are any thoughts, questions, inputs that you have during the session, please write it down. I'll take a break in between and I'll look at the chat box. So let me just take some of the questions first. Very interesting questions, by the way. A friend asked, can you speak about the benefits of blessing the food before cooking or before eating the food? I thought this is very beautiful and important. Let's begin today's discussion from this. The benefit of blessing the food. So first of all, a correction in this question itself is that we don't bless the food that we're cooking or eating. We offer it to the divine. We pray to the food. We feel gratitude for the opportunity that we have food on the table. We invoke the divinity through food. Yeah, so we don't directly bless the food. Yeah, we invoke the divine blessing through food. There's a bit of a correction there to the friend who's asked the question. But why is this tradition? Many cultures across the world have this tradition that we invoke the deity, or we offer the food to the divine first before partaking it, before consuming it. Why? What's the significance of that? Few things to understand here. We all know and we all experienced that food directly influences our moods, our thought processes. If you consume a little bit of, let's say, marijuana or any kind of narcotic, plant-based narcotic, let's say, if you consume that, straight away it starts to alter your chemical processes within your body and within your mind. You start to experience different states of mental visions or phenomena. What did you do? You just consumed a part of a plant. Yeah. Similarly, when you let's say take a cup of coffee or a tea or Coke, it's suddenly it goes into your central nervous system. It impacts, it influences your central nervous system. You feel awake, you feel energetic, you feel, certain hormones get released. Yeah. Suddenly you're not lethargic anymore. Lots of people not able to sleep if they drink, let's say, coffee in the evening. Yeah. Effects of food. So what we eat directly alters our state of mind and also our states of consciousness. The marijuana or the coffee or the tea are just examples. I'm using strong examples. Because when you've consumed these products, you've immediately noticed the shift in your consciousness. Yeah. But the point is that anything that you consume, any kind of food that you consume, does that to you. Tea or coffee or marijuana, does it immediately at a very intense pace? Lots of other food do it, little by little. Not like this. But every food that we consume make an effect in our chemical composition of body mind. Every food. Yeah. And lack of food also, by the way. For an example, if you don't eat your breakfast on a certain day and you go to work, and for some reason you're also not getting your cup of tea or a coffee or even your lunch, maybe you're too busy, you're missing that. If you observe yourself, just because you've skipped 1 or 2 meals, you start to feel headache. Yeah. Soon the headache converts itself into irritation. You get irritated. You're talking to your colleagues, your family, your friends, there's an irritation. Yeah. So the lack of food. So food or lack of food, in both ways, it impacts your chemical composition, your energy composition in the body mind. Now, similarly, have you observed, there's a very interesting research I was reading the other day, and it states that, and I've also observed this, during festive seasons, holiday seasons, in India, let's say Deepavali, in the West, let's say Christmas, 2 large festivals, which involves a lot of traveling, sharing of gifts, deciding gifts to give, hosting parties, too much of physical activities, too much of mental activity, lots of stress people experience. So there was very interesting research which says that during these big festivals, there's a spike in the rates of depression and anxiety. Some of the scientists thought that the spike is in the rate of depression suddenly during the festive months is maybe because people are not getting enough time for themselves. Maybe because in their homes they're too occupied with, families and extended families. Maybe their minds are too occupied to think or decide about certain gifts, etc., etc. But they missed a point. And the point is, during these periods, suddenly your food habits, the kind of food that your body is used to consuming, changes. Suddenly you are consuming a lot of sugar, refined sugar-based food, a lot of refined oil-based food, a lot of fatty food, a lot of drinks maybe. So for those days, 3, 4, 5, whatever, the quality of the food that you're consuming and even the content of the food that you're consuming. In India, I see a lot of mithais, sweets getting distributed during these festivals. You're just walking by, there's a sweet on the table, you take a piece, eat it. You're not realizing that the input, the content of refined sugar in your diet has suddenly spiked. Food. Content of food. It changes the chemical composition. More refined food that we consume, more heavy the system becomes. In many cases, depression is directly linked to the kind of food that we eat. More refined, more sugary, more starch based, more fatty. Yeah. I'm just setting the background to answer to or to enter into the dimensions of these questions. The blessing, why do we pray to the food? And why we're talking about this, friends, is the first kosha, Annamaya kosha, the first layer of who we are, the first layer with which we identify ourselves, the first layer of food body. Yeah. So there are 3 things very, very important in the food. Because the food becomes who we are, because the food becomes how we think, because the food becomes how we experience, how we feel, how our moods are, because food is responsible for all of this. In the ancient Indian tradition, we said 3 things are very important when it comes to food. First, and that is the process of cultivation, the food that you consume. The source from where the food is coming, or the process of cultivation. First thing, which means the purity of the food content itself is extremely important, especially for a sadhak, for a seeker, for a meditator, for a yogi. The quality of the food content, and I'll come to that. What do I mean by that? Second, they said, the process of cooking is very important. Who is cooking, with what mental attitude, with what emotion, with what bhav the person is cooking the food, that changes the quality of it. Second component, they said, is very important. The third component, they said, is the vessel in which the food is cooked. So they said, if you want to maintain the purity of Annamaya kosha, purity of the food body, purity of the food mind, these 3 things need to be purified. The food content itself, the process of cooking, who's cooking basically, and the food vessel. These 3 needs to be purified. Think about it, friends. These 3 components about food, they said, needs to be purified if you want to experience well-being at the health level, well-being at spiritual level, at energetic level. Yeah. Now let's enter into each one of these. See where we are. Purity of the food content itself. Do we even know what we are eating? Do we even know the source of the food that we consume? Do we know that with which bhav, with which emotion the farmer has cultivated this particular food item? No. In many cases, no. Because we go to the supermarket, buy food, or we order online, buy food. Yeah, think about it. You cannot ensure the bhav, the emotion with which the farmer has cultivated the crop, if there is no connect with the source directly. That's the reason in the ancient time, the food segment or the food was not an industry as commercialized as it is today. I remember even when I was a child, we knew the cultivators. The cultivators would come to our locality every day, every evening, to offer their or to sell their food grains or vegetables or fruit, whatever they've grown. It still happens in large parts of the country. But this process needs a little bit of your conscious involvement. But you don't do that, the energy body, the spiritual well-being is compromised. I'm talking about the ancient Indian tradition. I'm talking about what the Vedas say. Yeah. Second, the process of cooking, with which bhav, with which emotion the food is being cooked. Because as we say, the essence of the creator is in the creation. So the essence of cooking, the essence of the cook is in the food that he or she is cooking. Again, let's go back to the tradition. In the tradition, food was cooked by the family members. By the elders in the family, food was cooked. So your grannies, your grandparents, your mothers, these people will cook food. You would never have external support or let's say the hired staff to cook food, because they knew that the essence of the creator is in the creation, the essence of the cook is going into the food that is being prepared. There was no culture of eating out, because when you're eating out of all the three dimensions, you don't know anything. You don't know about the vessel, you don't know about the bhav, emotion of the person who's cooked the food, you don't know about the source from where the food content has come. There was no culture of eating out. It was a very sacred process. To the extent that even in the temples in India, I'm talking about India right now, even in Indian temples, you couldn't buy food items from the market, ready-made food, the bread or whatever, and offer it to the deity. That was not considered as a sacred thing. If you have to offer something to the temple, to the deity, you better cook it yourself at your home. You wash the kitchen, you wash the utensil, you wash your own self, then cook, because you know what I'm cooking, I'm going to offer it to the gods, to the temple. Then comes the vessel, the third component in this. And I think these people were very scientific. The ancient seers and rishis were very scientific. I kept wondering, why are they talking about the quality and the cleanliness of the vessel also? For two reasons. One was the hygiene, because they didn't want any insects to go into the vessel unnoticed, and then the insect getting cooked with the food, so the violence is created to that insect. So they were wary about the violence to the insect also, and two, the hygiene of the food being cooked. One. The other very interesting scientific reason why they said that, because the quality and the nourishing value of the food that you eat is really dependent on the vessel in which the food is cooked. Do you know that the vessels that we use these days for cooking largely, which is aluminium, I think aluminium is used a lot in the cooking. It kills over 90% of the nutritive value of whatever you're cooking in that. What retains the maximum value of the nutrient of the food is earthen pots. This is what ancient tradition used, the earthen pots. 97% of the nutritive value is preserved when you cook in an earthen pot. then followed by brass and so on. Very important things. But then they realized that for many people, it is almost impossible to ensure the purification of these three elements for a variety of reasons. So they said, if you can ensure the purity of these three things, you must. And then they said, if you cannot ensure the quality of these three things, the purity of these three things, how do you then purify the food? They said, invoke the deity. They said, offer it to the divine first before you consume. They said, share it with the people all around. Do not eat alone if you want to make the energy of the food purified. They said, do not eat alone. Eat with Sangha, share it with other people also. There is a beautiful verse in Rig Veda. Just see how these things are connected. But before that, let me just talk about how do we ensure these three things, the purity of these three things in our daily life. Can we not procure our food from local farmers? Now in every city there is a organic farmer market I know of. Can we not procure food from them, establish a relation, establish a connection? Can we not know the growers? We can. Needs little bit of effort. But it changes the energetic quality of the food. Now there is a connect. Can we not shift to the naturally and organically grown food? Yes, we can. Can we not make sure that the poisonous substance, the chemical substance in the food that they put in the commercial farming, our Annamaya Kosha, our body mind does not need it. It's dangerous for our energy system. It's dangerous for our Annamaya Kosha, our food body. Can we not stay away from that? Can we not make a conscious choice to stay away from processed food, from access refined foods? We can, simple things. Why we are doing that? Because this is what we are. This food is going to become us. If we are eating this toxic laden food, that's what we are going to become. Our thoughts are going to govern by that. There's a direct impact. Can we not make that choice? We can, of course. Can we not make sure that we know the people who are cooking food? We have a relationship with people who are cooking food. We're making sure that the people who are cooking food are happy people. We can. Can we not make sure that what are the right vessels for the food to cook, to serve, to eat in? We can. Small conscious choices. Yeah, I'll share this quote from Rig Veda. I'll read it out. It says, and I'm sharing the translation in English with you. It says, I speak the truth. It is indeed his death. He who nourishes neither the god nor a friend. He who eats alone gathers inauspiciousness and bad karmas. Rig Veda. And if I'm not wrong, Rig Veda is considered the most ancient spiritual text ever written on this earth. Let me repeat the statement of the Rig Veda. It says, I speak the truth. It is indeed his death. He who nourishes neither the god nor a friend. He who eats alone gathers inauspiciousness or bad karma. What is Rig Veda talking about? Nothing but invocation. What is Rig Veda talking about? Nothing but Annam Pravaha Brahmam Swarupa. What is Rig Veda talking about? That please purify the food. Keep the greed aside, share it with people. That is why in many traditions there's a culture of offering food to people whom you don't even know. In the Sikh temples, the Gurudwara, most of the Gurudwaras, the Sikh temple, offer free food whosoever visit the Gurudwara. And if the Gurudwara is large enough, then they run this process 24/7, 365 days a week, a month, a year, offering free food. Annam Parabrahmam Swarupa. Yeah, this is how, and this is why you offer food to the deity, to the gods first. You make the deity, the divine, your partner in this process of consuming food. You share it with them, you offer it to them first. Then you share it with people all around. Then you consume food. I'm reminded of incidents from my own childhood. You know, my grandmother, I was a small kid, and my grandmother, it was a routine in her life. 3 things were actually routine. Her daily puja, the ritual of prayerfulness to the gods, to her deities. To fast on certain days, ritual. She would do it, religiously. And third was this: every meal that she would have, she would take a few bites of let's say chapati or rice, whatever she's eating. She'll make 3 portions. Actually, she'll create 4 portions out of it. 1 portion she'll keep it for herself. 1 portion she'll keep it for the cow, because those days there were cows in Indian cities. They would just roam around, wander around. The cows still happens. So she'll keep 1 portion for the cow. She'll keep another portion for the birds, and she'll break those the chapati into smaller granules, so that the birds, the sparrows, can consume it easily. And she would take the raw rice grains or the flour, another portion of that every day, every meal, and that she'll keep it for the ants, because we lived in not the cement concrete houses. Our floors were rough, mud floors, and there were ants all around. There were ant houses nearby, everywhere around the house. She'll go every day, pour this flour, pour this grain of rice for the ants. So she would make sure that she doesn't eat alone. Ants get their food, birds, sparrows get their food, cows get their food, and then she gets her food. Yeah, this is the process which is still followed in some houses. Any beggar come to the house, those days the beggar would come and knock on the door of your house. And every time a beggar comes, even if there is nothing cooked at home in the kitchen, she'll go in the kitchen, cook 2 chapatis, cook something for the beggar, and then give the food to the beggar. What a beautiful tradition. So this is how, and this is why we invoke the deities. We pray to the gods before consuming the food, so that we are able to purify the food at all the 3 levels that we talked about. Yeah. Good. Okay. Another friend has asked a question. She says, while I observe the food craving and the hunger, both are different. Yes, craving and hunger are 2 different things. But at one point she says, the mind gives up on craving and start to binge. Can you please tell a little about the moment in between craving and eating? What should we do? I thought very relevant question. The moment between hunger and craving, what should we do? I would suggest two things. Just two things. First, when the craving is arising in you for food, you just watch that craving. You just see that craving rising in. Yes, the mind will give in to the craving. Sure, let it, because it's a practice you need to build up. So if the mind gives in to the craving, it's all right. But you keep watching even the mind who is giving in to the craving, and you acknowledge it to yourself that I am giving in to my craving. My mind is giving in to the craving, but I am a witnesser. I am watching this process of the mind. Just make actually that statement. Say that statement to your own self. That I know my mind is giving in to the craving, yet I am watching this process and the play of the mind. I am seeing how my mind is overpowering me. Just this first step. And then giving to the craving. It's all right. Second, this happens because we lack strength of our resolve. We lack strength of the capacity to hold ourselves. So what do you do when you lack strength? First, the process of witnessing where you're watching, and this witnessing itself will increase your capacity, your strength. And the second thing that you should do is simple yet very powerful process called prayerfulness. Pray to the divine. Talk to the divine. Pray to the divine saying that I am lacking the strength and the resolve and the capacity to hold. My mind gives in too easily. Allow me this strength. Bless me with this strength to hold while I continue to do my practice. Remember, my friend who's asked this question, you're not alone in your inner processes. You're not alone in this evolutionary process. There's an energy which we call God, or divine, or existence, or consciousness, or nature, or the collective energy. There's that energy which is all with you, which is supporting your processes. We're not alone. Because if we were alone and it was our task to breathe, then we would forget breathing, no? Many times during the day, and then we would die. Yeah. But that does not happen because there's a force which is partnering with you in this process called life. You're not alone. Realize this. It's a big illusion when I think I'm alone in this life, I'm alone in this process of inner evolution. It is not. It is not so. You're not alone. There's a force, there's a field, there's an energy, there's a consciousness which is with you constantly. That's the energy which keeps you alive. That's the energy which breathes the breath in you continuously without your doing anything. So look at it this way, that there's something in you, there's some force in you which has a very strong resolve. You lack the resolve, which means your mind lacks the resolve, but this force has a very strong resolve to keep you alive. So this force 24/7, day and night, keeps breathing. Make sure the heart is beating, the process of breathing is on. Invoke that force. Invoke that force, talk to that force, make a connection, relationship with that force. And that force is very strong, it's very profound. The great Indian beautiful saint, Ramakrishna Paramhansa, the guru of Swami Vivekananda, Ramakrishna Paramhansa would recommend, would tell to his devotees, his fellow seekers, that I see that you don't talk to the mother. Ramakrishna Paramhansa used to pray to the Divine Mother, to the Kali. And he would often tell them, the devotees, that I see you do not talk to the mother. You just go to her temple, you pray, you make a ritual, and you offer flowers and incense or whatever, you don't talk to her. Why you don't talk to her? Do you have a distrust in your heart that she is not the mother of the universe? Do you think she is just a stone image? Do you think that it is just a temple made up of stone and the mother is not really sitting there? No, no. Mother lives there. Mother is sitting there. So please talk to the mother. He was such an innocent, childlike, enlightened being that he used to really talk to the mother, the Kali, the divine manifestation of the Prakriti. So talk to your mother here, or mother in any deity form that you like. Invoke that being. You are in partnership with that. The day you invoke that truly, your life will change, because that energy responds, that power, that consciousness responds. The day you talk to that energy, that consciousness, that existence, and the day that responds back, that's a day of transformation in a seeker's life. Another different level of trust starts to develop in your being. But in order for that to happen, you need to initiate this process. Yeah, think about it. Think about it. Another friend has asked, can you please share the most beneficial ways of fasting? Sure, because in the last session we talked a lot about fasting. It's a good question. What he's asking is, how should we fast to receive maximum benefit out of that process? Yeah. 3 things here. To that friend and to all of you. First, your attitude of fasting is what makes all the difference. If you fast just for the body well-being, because now it is scientifically proved that observing fast regularly is extremely good for your body. You can keep even diseases like cancer far away, because fasting does something at a cellular level. That's the reason all the traditions across globe, as part of their religious practice, they had fasting. They built in fasting as part of the religious practice. But is fasting just for the body well-being? No. Is fasting just to make sure that your body is balanced, nourished, detoxified, etc., etc.? No. If you do that, then it's like you're using the nuclear power to charge your mobile phone only. Yeah. Fasting, if you have the right attitude, which is the first thing, the attitude of invocation, the attitude of, by fasting you are gaining strength, you're purifying body, you are gaining strength of the mind to control. You're gaining strength of the mind to have a stronger resolve, as I was talking earlier, to have capacity of hold, to bring clarity of thought, because the practice of fasting also brings clarity of thought. You become more alert, your consciousness becomes more alert, your awareness becomes more alert when you fast. Yeah. But the attitude of fasting. Do not restrict your fasting only for well-being of the body. Extend it to the spiritual gains also. That's the first thing, the attitude. The second thing about fasting, which on a practical level, is on the days on which you observe fasting, it is good to go easy, to have those days as not very packed with activity. Because the essence of fasting, as I said in the point number 1, the essence of fasting is also to remember your ultimate purpose in life. The essence of fasting is also to connect with the self residing in you, the divinity residing in you. The essence of fasting is also to enhance the capacity to meditate, to reduce the mental movement. Fasting helps you to do that also with practice. Yeah. So at a practical level, make sure that your days of fasting are not too packed with external activity. Make sure that you meditate on your days of fasting. Make sure there's a relaxation around you during the days of fasting. Make sure if you do any kind of ritual, puja, prayer, make sure you do that. Make sure you do light pranayama in the morning. Make sure you invoke the God, the deity, the whichever form of higher being, higher existence that you connect with. Yeah. So that's the second aspect of fasting. That fasting is to build meditativeness in you, not just physical well-being. So adjust your practical day accordingly. The third thing about fasting, or to draw maximum benefit out of fasting, is start easy. Do not get too overexcited, because I see a lot of people who become too overexcited by fasting, who do not consider point 1 and point 2 that I talked about, who do not consider that fasting is for spiritual strength, for meditative strength. I've seen a lot of friends who do fasting, and during the day of fasting they will try and keep their mind occupied with non-essential things. In India there is a very famous vrat, the fasting day which married women keep fast on. That day is called Karwa Chauth. It's a day of fasting when the women observe fasting for the well-being of their husband. Beautiful tradition, yeah. But it's a very strict fast. From early morning to late evening till the moon rises, you're not allowed to have even water. It's a very tough fast. Nirajal Upavasa it's called. An upavasa, fast without even water. No food, no liquid, not even water. So what most of these women I've seen traditionally, even in my extended family, what most of these women do during the day, because they want to distract their mind from the hunger pangs, they'll get together or eat tambola, some kind of a card game. They'll binge watch movies just so that the mind is distracted. Just so that, the 2 hours of movie, and if they watch 2 movies, at least 4 hours of the day passed. I also know some people, some women, who before the fast begins in the early morning, they eat a sleeping pill. Because they want to sleep most of the day and not be bothered about the hunger. What a way. We're fasting. Yeah? It's like you've lost the essence of it. You made a sacred process into a burdensome process. Yeah. And why they do that? Because they've not built the practice to fast. Because they do not understand the relevance, the significance of fast. The day, the 24 hours of fasting, which is extremely important, sacred moments. So to build that, I would suggest the third thing, start easy. Do not give yourself high targets. Start easy means maybe start to observe fasting with days of fasting where you promise yourself, I'll only consume, let's say, fruits and raw vegetables, or maybe soups or juices also. I will not eat any grain, any animal product. Once in couple of months you're able to build that, then reduce one component out of it, then reduce another component out of it. Then you will be able to gain enough strength of the mind and body when you say, okay, today I'll fast only with water. And maybe after that you'll say, okay, I'll do nirjal without water fasting. Maybe you say, okay, instead of 20 hours I'll observe day-long fast. Yeah, during the day I'll not eat anything. Only by the sunset I'll consume some basic food. So there are different ways to build it up. Yeah. So start small. The bhav, the emotion, the attitude is the most important one. Yeah. So we're just not doing it at the physical level alone. Yeah? So these to me are the three ways you start to build your strength to fast and start to expand your attitude of fasting. Yeah. Good. Okay. Let me take a minute to look at some of the chat comments. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Some friends have written privately, not a question but a few comments. Very beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. Okay. Another friend has asked last time that, and this is a very millennial question, new age question. She's asked about, what about the food bloggers or even travelers, who when they travel, they want to experience different cuisine, new food, different kind of, taste and cultural nuances of food. What about them? How should they should look at food? I thought it's an interesting question. I should talk about it. Very simple, very, very simple. Nothing changes. If you're traveling or if you're a food blogger and you want to taste different foods, you want to write about it, etc., or you want to experience different cuisine, nothing changes about the basic food things that we talked about. What is that? I would suggest keep these 4 elements about food in your zehen, in your mind, in your consciousness always. You're eating at home, you're a food blogger, you're traveling, whatever. Keep these 4 elements about food in your consciousness. First, food is about hunger. Let there be hunger before you taste food. Just that. First element. Second element about food is nutrition. You must eat the food that is very nutritious. You should not eat food which you know is not nutritive. Second fundamental element about food. Because if you eat something which you already know is not nutritional, it's going to create ruckus in your system. Yeah. The third element which you should keep in mind is about enjoyment. The rasa, in Hindi we call it rasa, the enjoyment. Food is, friends, also about enjoyment. Is also about experiencing the taste, the smell, the dimensions of food. So make sure there's an element of enjoyment also when you eat. Yeah, it's not a dry process. Fourth element, the element of prayerfulness, the element of gratitude for the food. Even as a food blogger or a traveler, when you're tasting different cuisine, can you not be prayerful about what you're eating, what you're tasting? I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can. So just these 4 elements. Just these keep 4 elements of the hunger, the nutritional, which is basically the purity that we talked earlier, the prayerfulness about food, and the enjoyment of food. 4 elements. And what you need to be cautious about is greed. That you've gone out and there is new kind of food and there are 20 different dishes and you're greedy and you start to consume everything unmindfully. You become greedy. Just watch yourself for that. Do not do that. Yeah. Because whenever you do that, or whenever you've done that in the past, you see life is very beautiful. It keeps teaching you. You go to an Indian wedding and there's enormous amount of food and enormous quality of food, different things, and you binge on it. You consume unmindfully a lot. What happens to you in the night then? You're really feeling horrible in the stomach. You can't sleep properly. You're feeling, lots of uncomfortableness in your system. Your body is teaching you, is telling you that this way is not the right way. Listen to your body. Don't torture yourself just because you're in a new location and there are 20 free things being offered. Just watch yourself. Don't become greedy about it. Yeah? You've been eating since you were this. 40, 50, 60 years you've been eating. Don't be greedy about it anymore. Yeah? So if you just maintain these things in your consciousness, you're fine. Yeah? Okay. There's a very interesting question another friend has asked. I'm also looking at the time. Let's spend 10 minutes on this. This is an important question. This friend has asked, what about the consumption of food and the manner in which it has been produced? Not just the nutritional value, but for example, the way in which living beings have been raised for us to eat, but have lived in horrible, terrible conditions. The meat industry. I thought this is an important question. I should spend a few minutes on that. Thanks for asking this question. In the spiritual traditions, no matter which spiritual tradition we are talking about, but in the spiritual traditions, one of the fundamental thing is we're trying to minimize the violence caused through our actions. It's a fundamental thing. We're trying to minimize the violence caused to our own self and to other beings all around. It's a fundamental thing about spiritual tradition or spiritual evolution. How do we cause violence to ourselves? So let me give you an example of, let's say, the fasting bit we talked about. You've not built your right attitude of fasting. You're too excited to become a yogi suddenly, and you starve yourself. You starve yourself to misery in the name of fasting. That's a violence to yourself. You've lost the balance. Yeah. Similarly, or your stubbornness, let's say. You're very stubborn and hence you want to fast and cause violence to your own self. But the spiritual traditions, the basis of all the spiritual traditions is also about violence to the others. And how do we cause violence to the others? 3 ways. We cause violence to the others through our thoughts, through our words, through our actions. Now, eating food or animals in the name of food which have been grown in a horrible way, which have been tortured in a horrible way, so on and so forth, which have been killed just because we eat food, I don't think there is any spiritual culture which would allow that. You can have your personal choices, but as a spiritual culture, meat eating, in my view, no culture would probably allow it. Yes, religion is a different thing. Religious practices are of a different things, and there are too much of chaos and corruption there. We're not talking about that dimension. We're talking about the strictly spiritual dimension, the inner evolution dimension. I don't bother about what the religion says or does. Yeah, because there's a corruption which is taken over. But consuming non-vegetarian food is something which causes grave violence, out of question, absolutely out of question. Now, having said that, what happens when you consume something which has gone through such deep violence? It totally disturbs your, not just Annamaya Kosha, it also disturbs your energy body. It also starts to destroy your energy body. People are not that sensitive to be able to sense it. Yeah. But if you start to meditate, you'll start to become more sensitive. You'll start to experience that. That the day you eat non-vegetarian food, for an example, the dreams that you see in the night will be of very different nature. The thoughts that you get in your head would be of very different nature. Yeah. So that's one aspect. It almost kind of burdens your spiritual awakening. We're on a journey of becoming lighter to awaken. But this kind of food, burdens your system, burdens your energetic field. Yeah? It creates leaks in your energy body. Now, the other aspect of it, just observe in your life, what does violence do? Violence breeds suffering. Isn't it? Violence breeds suffering, and in this life everything is connected. It's a one large energy field, everything travels. So if you commit violence to a living being, animal, it creates suffering which travels and comes back to us. Yeah? It's like saying, okay, let's understand it this way. That could be an interesting analogy. Let's understand the whole life, this whole earth, like a human body. One connected being. Earth has 70% water, we have 70% water. The composition of water on the ocean and the composition of water in human bodies almost similar. We are made up of the same 5 elements. This earth is also made up of the same 5 elements. There's a lot of similarity. So let's say the life forces or the earth is one human body. Yeah. Let's say you as a human being is like this hand. Let's say an animal which you eat is like a finger here. You are bigger, more evolved consciously. This animal is smaller, he is just a finger, you are the whole hand. Now what happens, let's say, if with this hand, which is human being, you break your own finger, what happens? What happens? The suffering, the pain, the agony which will be caused by breaking this finger will be felt by the entire body. Your entire body will be in agony and pain and suffering, including this hand, isn't it so? This is what happens. When we cause suffering to an animal life, the suffering travels to the entire body. What happens when when there's too much of suffering? When there's too much of suffering from multiple angles, your hand is trying to break this finger, that finger, and this and that, what happens then? Your system starts to shut down. Your system starts to become diseased. Your system starts to generate infections because you're cutting your own self. Do you follow? And that infection, that pain, that agony, that suffering is spread throughout the body, which is called earth. Everything suffers. Not just this hand, your legs, everything suffers. That's what we do, humans on earth. Yeah? Okay, then what about the plant life? So look at consciousness as an evolution. Consciousness as an evolution is, you have plant life? No. So you have rocks, let's say. The stone and rocks as first level. Yeah, of evolution. You have, then the consciousness evolved itself into plant life. Then consciousness evolved itself into animal life. Then consciousness evolved itself into human life. These are stages of evolution, let's say. Yeah. Now in the stages of evolution, because you as an entity also needs to survive, it is allowed to consume plants. There is consciousness there also, but much less. Because as the consciousness grows, the suffering that the consciousness will experience also grows. So when you break a mountain, you're causing suffering to the mountain, but the the consciousness in the mountain is too less to experience that suffering. When you cut a plant, the plant is also experiencing suffering, but the consciousness is less evolved there. So the suffering, the experience of suffering is lesser. In the animal it is more, in the human it is much more. Hence we say it is allowed to eat plant-based life. Because that amount of suffering you will have to create to sustain yourself. That's your dharma, to sustain yourself. Yeah? But you have a choice. How much suffering do you want to create? Do you want to create suffering of the animal world or suffering to the plant world, where the quantum of suffering is going to be much smaller, much slower, much shorter? Yes, we said plant is all right. But we said even when you consume plant life, be conscious about it. Don't cut all the forest and everything and just grow palm oil there or soya bean there or do monoculture. No, life is about diversity. So we said eat diverse food, plant-based. Because if you kill all the forest and grow, let's say, palm oil, palm trees, you've caused unconsciously you've caused suffering. It was allowed to have multiplicity and then consume out of that multiplicity. But now you brought in the whole greed element into it. Yeah, you've combined the unconsciousness of greed into this now. Do you follow? Yeah. So if we take the example analogy of the human body, it's all right to cut your hair and your nails, isn't it so? Now hair and nail also have life and consciousness, but the experience of suffering is much lesser. So we said it's allowed to cut. I don't cut it, that's a different matter. Yeah. But we said that it's all right to cut your hair and nails. These are like plant life. It's allowed to cut that. But if you cut your finger, it's going to cause a lot of suffering. Animal. Do you follow? Using the same analogy. So that's how we said, as a spiritual process, your choices must make sure that they cause much lesser suffering. You will cause some suffering, that's for sure. The process of living is such. But can you make conscious choices to reduce the amount of suffering? You know, there are yogis who make a vow that they will only eat the fruit which has fallen from the tree. So they say, now it's gone. Now I will eat that. I will not even cause that much suffering to pluck the fruit from a tree. Or there are yogis who say, no, I will only survive on the sun energy. There are ways to do that. They say, we don't want to cause any injury, any suffering. It's about energy. I know the yogic ways to directly receive the energy from the sun without causing any violent suffering. Those are extreme ways. You have to be very trained to be able to practice that. But the point I'm making is, all your choices are in a way such that they cause much lesser suffering within your own self and to all the beings around. Yeah, we've almost extended our time. There are few more questions. Okay, I have a proposition, friends, here. There are few comments, charts also. Okay, I have a proposition here. I think this is a very important subject we've started talking about. Looking at your responses and your feedbacks and the amount of questions that are still there, I think it will be wise to have one more satsang on the same theme next Sunday. Yeah, if you all agree, we can extend that. So we meet next Sunday on the same time to continue on this theme and then conclude it. Yeah.
Annam Parabrahmam Swarupam Annam Parabrahmam Swarupam Annam Parabrahmam Parabrahmam Swarupam Annam Parabrahmam Swarupam Annam